That was the day's commentary, Emergence of a Climate Regime That Works, scripted by Mukul Samwal, former director of UNFCCC, and it was read by Surya G. Yadav. This is the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. In a short while, I will bring to you film duets. It will be followed by a program of films in which you can listen to a talk titled The Vintage Hero and Character Actor Jairaj at 21:30 hours UTC. At 22 hours UTC, you can listen to the news bulletin. At 22:10 hours UTC, we will bring to you the day's commentary. And at 22:15 hours UTC, you can listen to our program Women's World, in which we will tell you about delicacies of Rajasthan. It's time for film duets by Asha Bhosle and Mohammad Rafi.
Together on social media to discuss that. And there's also a growing recognition of the fact that the issues of oppression are intertwined, they're connected, and that we can't really talk about justice in Palestine and hope that, the same officials in the U.S. are going to bring that about because they're going to somehow change their mind about Palestine when that same government is oppressing people, and particularly oppressing people of color within the United States. And it's going to be people who are oppressed around the world who are each other's own best allies in standing up against oppression. And, there's a lot of discussion and talk about social media activism. And what this was real activism that was based in communities, that's actually challenging police violence, challenging occupation. And social media was just a tool that these activists were using to enable their connections with one another and make them stronger. I mean, the Palestinian movement has always been connected to international movements. Palestinian fighters and ANC fighters from the African National Congress trained together in Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon in the 1970s. Black movements in the United States were attending the congresses of the non-aligned movement and tricontinental forces to talk about a new world that was based on justice and ending colonialism. And so these connections have always existed, but now instead of having to exist through physically attending a conference or being in a place or taking place over years, it's more instantaneous.
And would you say because of this instantaneous quality that there's a possibility that it will grow more quickly?
Exactly.
Do you see possibilities in the midst of, say, greater capacity for oppression? Do you also see greater capacity for organization and activism and change?
I think there's both, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us who care about justice to try to make the most of those opportunities. I mean, one thing that we are seeing is growing conflict, and that conflict is happening because there's movement, because people are not simply dying and being suppressed and being silent. There is not an end to resistance, and there has not been. Around 20 years ago, it was popular kind of from the Fukuyama book to talk about the end of history. And we can see that history has not ended, and movements have not ended, and conflict has not ended, and struggle has not ended, and neither has resistance. And so even though in many ways we're looking at a world where technology is not always our friend, it's a mechanism of surveillance, it's a mechanism of kind of global interconnected security coordination, which is being used to surveil and suppress movements. It's a time when perhaps the imbalance of military power is the strongest that it's ever been, considering the level of weaponry that's held by like the United States, whose military budget is greater than most other countries combined, and its allies such as Israel, and people who are trying to create homemade weapons in order to resist this kind of military power. So there's massive disparity, and that's something that we're seeing. But what we also do see is that there is resistance. When we're talking about Palestinian prisoners, there hasn't been a year that's passed, since the 1970s, when there's been a hunger strike of Palestinian prisoners demanding changes, demanding justice, demanding freedom. There hasn't been an end to resistance in Palestine. Palestinians continue to insist on their land. What we saw in Ferguson was an actual uprising taking place. That was what kind of, I think, drew the attention of the world so much, that despite the, hundreds of years of slavery and of oppression and of Jim Crow type oppression, and then the ongoing kind of police militarization and brutality, that black people in the U.S. do still have movements. And are creating new movements and are building and organizing. And so the conflict and the struggle that's taking place is not just producing trauma. It's not just producing